The rain pounded hard against the dojo windows that evening. The majority of students had long since gone home, but I stayed behind, punching the wooden dummy with greater and greater force. Each punch rang out through the vacant hall, not only the impact of flesh on wood, but the crack of thunder of a man fighting himself. You see, I had refused to teach a student that day. He had time, he had money, but whatever it was in his eyes said that he was not there to learn. He was there to take, to gather techniques like trophies. I remembered myself in him, the younger version of myself who stockpiled knowledge, who thought that power lay in what you had. As lightning strobed outside, lighting up my reflection in the mirror, I came to realize a deep truth that would transform not only my martial arts, but my whole philosophy of living. The more you give, the more you receive. This paradox has influenced everything I've done since that stormy evening. For months I fought, instructing just a few students, wary of anyone who had too many questions about my practices. I was guarding my rice bowl, as we say in China. But my rice bowl was almost depleted. All that changed when I encountered an old master who came from Hong Kong. After observing me during a private lesson, he took me aside and told me something that I will never forget. Young man, you've filled your cup so full that nothing more can be added. Empty your cup. That night I lay awake. His words lingered with me. Was I so full of my own knowledge that I could not take it in anymore? Was my grip on what I did know keeping me from expanding further? The following day, I did something that filled me with fear. I conducted an open seminar, spreading ideas I had previously guarded. I showed techniques I had only reserved for master students. I gave freely without regard for what I could lose. Something wonderful took place. The more I gave, the more ideas flowed to me. As I instructed, new synapses fired in my brain. But I warn you, what I'm about to tell you isn't just another motivational speech. These aren't words to momentarily inspire you back into your original ways. No, what I'm providing you with is an entire reshaping of how you look at everything. Your training, your relations, your occupation, your actual reason for existence. And after you finally really get this point, you'll never again regress to your prior method of thinking about the world. The only question is, are you ready to accept this fact? Can you deal with what occurs when you finally unclench your fists and no longer grasp so tightly to what you perceive as yours?
I recall when I first arrived in America, I possessed nothing but a few dollars and my background in martial arts.
I believe my knowledge was something to defend, to keep close, to share only with those who demonstrated value. This mentality, this lack thinking, it was like fighting with a fist that was clenched, constricted, tight, limited in scope. As I provided examples, improved methods presented themselves. By emptying the cup, by giving, it was being filled again with something much more valuable. This is the basic rule so many don't understand in their desire to master. They treat life as a transaction, always thinking about what they'll receive back first before they offer anything of themselves. They halfway train. They conditionally love. They labor with an eye on the clock, and they wonder why their progress plateaus, why their relationships dry up, why their work seems purposeless. They're attempting to get without first giving. They're demanding the harvest without first planting the seed. Pay close attention now, because this is true in all aspects of your life. In your practice, restraint, keeping your energy reserved, shielding yourself from pain, ensures that you will settle for mediocrity. The student who empties himself completely in practice, who goes over the edge at which others have given up, who is unafraid of failing spectacularly, that's the student who evolves at 10 times the speed of others. Why? Because when you give with all your being, you are creating room for receiving new abilities. Your body molds exactly to the requirements you lay upon it. Not more, not less. I had one student who trained for 3 hours each day, all year round. He would arrive early and go late, preceding everyone else as well as outlasting me. One day I confronted him, saying, "Why do you practice so diligently, while others have already left?" His response told the whole story. "Because, Master, when I give all to my practice gives all to me." 6 months passed, and he beat others who had been practicing for years. They were unable to figure out how one with less practice could beat them so soon. But you do now, don't you? He wasn't merely rehearsing movements. He was living the law of giving to receive. In your relationships, this law is even more potent. So many people go into relationships with a mindset of, what can this person do for me? How do they make me feel? What do I get out of this relationship? They keep an emotional accounting, always making sure they never give more than they get. And yet these same individuals ask themselves why their relationships seem shallow, transactional, in the end, unsatisfying. Real connection, the kind that feeds your soul, happens only when you're open to giving without promise of payback. Think back to my first marriage. Few do, because it lasted only months. I was young, driven, thinking only of what Linda could do for me, how she could help me achieve my dreams, fit into my life. The marriage was doomed because I went into it as a transaction. My second marriage to Linda, yes, another Linda, is flourishing after years. The difference? I quit asking what she could bring to my life and began asking what I could give to hers. Think also about your career, your calling. The most successful individuals I've met are not those who are fixated on receiving credit, earning compensation, or stepping on others. The truly successful commit themselves fully to their work, not for reward, not for recognition, but for the pure pleasure of contribution. They don't ask, what can I gain, but set how can I add value? They bring their full presence to each task, no matter how minor. And somehow, magically, opportunities come to them. Resources materialize at the right time, the proper connections are made at the opportune moment. When I founded my first school in America, I was still learning this lesson. I had high fees, limited knowledge, created artificial shortage. The school struggled to stay alive. My second school, I worked differently. I made it available. I taught freely. I defined success not in terms of what came to me, but in terms of what my students learned. That school prospered, and my students went on to become masters themselves. By giving more, I gained not only financial prosperity, but the deeper fulfillment of witnessing my knowledge reproduce through others. But be warned, this principle has a test, a moment of truth that will show you if you really get it, or if you just think you do. Because there will be a time when giving appears to reap nothing in return. You'll prepare for months with no apparent gains. You'll give yourself to a relationship that doesn't work out despite your best efforts. You'll labor with full devotion on a project that doesn't succeed. In these moments, the transactional mind panics. It says, giving doesn't work. Protect what you have. Withdraw. Hold back. This is the critical juncture where most people abandon the principle. They retreat into scarcity thinking, into protective postures, into half-hearted living. But those who truly understand know that giving isn't about immediate return. It's about creating capacity to receive. Sometimes the universe needs to drain your cup first before it can fill it up with something new. That broke relationship makes way for a greater one. That training plateau builds you up for a breakthrough. That career setback diverts you towards your destiny. Let me tell you a story that not many know. When my first movie achieved some success, I was offered a role that would have made me a celebrity overnight. The payment was more than I had ever received. But something bothered me. The character played into stereotypes. The plot was nothing. Everyone advised me to take it. My agent, my friends, even my father. Take what you can get, they urged. In great fear, I refused. For 2 years thereafter, no similar offers were made. I tormented myself with questioning my decision. Had I been crazy to give up such a chance? Then came the offer for the Green Hornet, a role that allowed me to bring dignity and depth to a character, that launched my career in a direction aligned with my values. By giving up what wasn't right, by creating space, I received something far better. Now, I'm going to instruct you in 3 particular exercises to incarnate this principle in your life. These are not abstract ideas. They're living tools that helped me go from a struggling martial artist with a few students to a person whose philosophy has influenced millions of people worldwide years after my physical body has passed on. Apply these exercises not as strict techniques, but as doorways to a new mode of existing. The first exercise is what I refer to as empty-handed training. Every day, find something you're grasping too tightly, a belief, a grudge, a possession, a desired result, and intentionally release your hand. Go completely. Perhaps it's your need for your method to be the only method, Perhaps it's bitterness against someone who did you wrong. Perhaps it's your insistence that things have to go in a certain way. Whatever it is, let it go completely, making room to receive something new. Initially, this will feel awful, as if you are stepping off a cliff. But eventually, you'll find an exhilarating freedom in this practice. I recall the day that I let go of my clinging to Wing Chun as the best system. For years, I had fought its corner, debated its supremacy, shut out other methods. The instant that I opened my hand, realizing its limitation, valuing other systems, my own system improved beyond my imagination. Jeet Kune Do could never have existed had I not initially trained empty-handed with my dearest assumptions about martial arts. The second practice is full cup living. Every day, ask yourself, where am I holding back today? Where am I giving less than I could? Then choose one place where you'll give absolutely, without holding back. Maybe in your exercise, you'll challenge yourself past your normal limits. Maybe in a conversation, you'll listen with your full attention instead of waiting for your turn to respond. Maybe at work, you'll apply your complete creativity to something you typically do on autopilot. It's not about burning out by giving everywhere. It's about tapping the power of wholehearted giving in deliberate, chosen moments. When I rehearse for a film scene, I don't give 90% during rehearsals and save my true performance until cameras start rolling. I give fully every time, learning new depths, new potentialities with each complete giving. When we actually shoot, my performance contains depths that might never have been achieved by going through careful, partial giving. Your life can be lived the same way. No saving yourself for some yet-to-be future moment, but living the force of giving now. The third practice is circular gratitude. At the end of each day, think about what you received today, not merely material goods, but moments of loveliness, understanding, connections, difficulties that made you stronger. Fully acknowledge these gifts, and then ask yourself, how can I make this abundance go around? How can what I received move through me to others? This brings the cycle of giving and receiving full circle, so that you never stagnate and there's always flow. Perhaps that which came back to you today was patience when things seemed terrible. You may share it out tomorrow by exercising unusual patience towards someone having a hard time. I follow this every evening, aware that my capabilities, my perceptions, my very chances are not to be monopolized, but to be shared. Even this lesson I'm presenting you with here is not mine. It passes through me from innumerable masters, lessons, and understandings I've gained. My sole qualification is not to block the flow, to allow what I've gained to pass on to you. So these three practices, empty-handed training, full cup living, and circular gratitude, they create an entire system for changing the way you live your life. And here's the thing that people most often overlook. These are not techniques that you use here and there when you think of them or if it's convenient. They become a way of being that then becomes second nature, your automatic state. Just as water doesn't attempt to flow, it just does what comes naturally. It too will flow naturally when these disciplines become a part of who you are. However, I must caution you about the pitfalls you will encounter while putting these disciplines into practice. The first and most serious pitfall is fear. Fear that if you give too much, you'll have nothing left. This is an old and deep-seated human consciousness. It tells you in a whisper that there is not enough, that you have to hold on to what you have, that sharing without promise of return is stupid. When fear creeps in, and it will, keep in mind that nature itself disproves this lack mentality. The fruit tree has no fear of bearing fruit. The sun doesn't hoard its rays. The spring doesn't preserve its water. The richest systems in nature are those that give most generously. The second challenge is the transactional thinking so deeply embedded in contemporary society. Everything around you reinforces the notion that giving must be calculated, measured, only done with clear expectation of return. Shifting out of this thinking takes conscious effort, a willingness to be perceived as impractical or naive by those still thinking transactionally. When I first began teaching all students, regardless of their ability to pay, many business-minded friends told me I would fail. They couldn't understand that what I received in return, the joy of spreading knowledge, the evolutionary pressure of diverse students, the community that formed around this approach, was worth far more than the money I might have made through exclusivity. The third obstacle is impatience. The principle of giving to receive doesn't always work on your preferred timeline. Sometimes you give and give without visible return, and it's in these desert periods that most people abandon the principle. They utter, "I tried to give more in my relationship and nothing worked." Or, "I gave myself to this project and it still didn't work." What they lack is that the returns are usually in unanticipated forms, at unanticipated times, unanticipated ways. The giving is never lost. It's developing ability, generating potential energy that will eventually be expressed, though perhaps not as you envisioned. Recall my struggling years of Hong Kong cinema? I sacrificed all to characters that barely covered the bills, to productions few saw. I might have lost heart, assuming my work was giving too little in return. But those supposedly unrewarding years were equipping me, strengthening my skills, my presence, my grasp of the craft. When finally the chance to introduce martial arts to Western people arrived, I was ready just because of those years of sacrificing without clear gain. And now we arrive at the most significant question. What does it do to you when you fully adopt this principle? What change awaits when you move from what can I get to what can I give? You feel first a deep release, the perpetual calculation, the balancing of effort and reward, the guarding of what's yours. All this constitutes a draining mental weight you've borne so long you've lost sight of its presence. When you let it go, the energy that rushes into your life is phenomenal. Second, you create a natural magnetism. Others are naturally attracted. Those who share truly from an abundant place, they can feel the contrast between someone who is coming from abundance and someone who is coming from scarcity. Your relationships become deeper, your network grows organically, opportunities seek you out, of you having to pursue them relentlessly. This isn't magical. It's the natural byproduct of becoming someone who creates value wherever you go, instead of constantly seeking to take value out of every interaction. Third, and most importantly, you find a source of fulfillment that is sustainable. Happiness derived from what you get is always fleeting, always susceptible to shifting tides. But the satisfaction found in giving, from contributing, from knowing your being in the world makes a positive difference. This is lasting. It is within reach, even through life's unavoidable difficulties. I've lived through this change myself. As I began teaching, I defined success based on what came to me: student registration, praise, revenue. There was always tension, always comparison, always the issue of whether I was receiving enough in return for effort. When I changed to defining success based on what my students were learning, on what I saw develop in them, on what principles they applied to their own lives, everything shifted. Even on tough days when things just didn't seem to work out, I could find my satisfaction in moments of connection, of transmission, of passing along something that may take root a long time after I was gone. This leads me to the final application of the principle: giving without attachment to results, giving without expectation of reward, giving without even observation. The peak of giving is when you give trees whose shadows you know you'll never get to sit under. When you give ideas which only come fully to be appreciated a generation downstream. When you give not because of what it brings, but for the sake that giving has come to be natural, as fundamental as breathing. I dreamed before my last film was finished, a dream that lingered with me. I was teaching a student in the dream who insisted over and over again, but when am I going to be powerful? When am I going to be respected? When am I going to get the advantages of all this training? I took him in the dream to a garden where there was a farmer planting seeds. Ask him, I instructed. The farmer gazed up, soiled hands clasped, and stated flatly, "I plant because that is what I am here to do. The harvest is not mine concern. It will come in its own time, perhaps even after I have passed on. My pleasure is in the planting itself." I awoke from that dream in complete clarity of purpose. I was not here to become famous, to get rich, to get awards. I was here to sow seeds, ideas, approaches, philosophies that might take root in ways I could never imagine, might produce fruit I would never enjoy. That vision released me entirely from the nervous tracking of what I was getting back. The act of giving itself became sufficient. And so I pose to you now, what seeds might you plant today? What might you give without regard to what you'll get back in return? Where might you give simply for the sake of giving? These questions, if you allow them, will change not only what you do, but who you are. They will change you from being only successful by the world's standards to being meaningful in ways that go beyond traditional metrics.
tension now.
The world is full of takers, people who come at life wanting to know what they can take, what they can get, what they can make theirs. Takers can gain in the short term, can accumulate great things, can even gain power, but their influence is always short term, their gratification always transitory, their legacy always suspect. And then there are the givers, the rare human beings who go into every day asking what they can give, what they can make better, what they can leave in a better place than they found it. Givers don't necessarily get the praise they deserve in the moment. They don't necessarily accumulate the most stunning stuff. They don't necessarily occupy the most admired roles. But their reach spreads out over time and distance, their satisfaction is deep and abiding, and their impact lives on after they do. I made my decision years ago in that dojo while rain ran down the windows, and I realized that my closed fist was not just keeping me from receiving, but from giving. I opened my hand that night, not my physical hand, but the figurative one that had gripped so hard to knowledge, to recognition, to control. And in that beginning, I found a strength much larger than anything I could do by comprehending. Now the decision is yours. Will you persist in the endless labor of figuring out what you are owed, defending what you have, wringing out what you can from every moment? Or will you enter the seeming contradiction that has changed lives for millennia, that to gain more, you have to give more? Will you open your hand? Recall this, the cup has to be drained first before it's filled with something new. Hands have to be open to receive. The air has to be exhaled thoroughly before the body can breathe fresh air. These are not only poetic metaphors, they're reality truths about the way energy flows, the way growth occurs, the way fulfillment operates. Give more, the more you can receive. I've taught you everything I can today. I've not only given you philosophy, but also practical techniques, not only inspiration, but a process of change. What you do with this instruction is your business. Some will hear and agree, but go on as usual. Others will try for a little while, but fall back when quick results don't materialize. But a few, maybe you, will see the deep truth in this principle and start the process of living it completely. If you go this way, understand that the practice makes it easier. Similar to any martial art, the techniques which initially make you feel uncomfortable become your second nature. The giving which initially scares you becomes your second nature eventually.